Grandma Celli was always to us larger than life. And she was also unusual and eccentric.
She was completely the most un-grandma person that, anyone could have. In fact, when I used to meet people for the first time, they would ask about me and stuff like that, and then I would mention something about my grandmother. She owns most of the porno theaters in New York. And then, of course, I would get the classic pause, which I think I actually enjoyed, which was, yeah, right, no, well, what does your grandmother really do? And I was like, no, it's the truth, actually.
New York in the 1970s was in a state of crisis pretty much for the whole decade. Businesses were moving out of the city into the suburbs. People were leaving the city to move to the suburbs. Although it was an incredibly dire economic situation, it was the incredibly creative period marked by this incredible sense of innovation and exploration.
New York City was very different in the 1970s. Everything that I remember was X-rated theaters everywhere. You know, my mother's theaters up and down the street.
Shelley Wilson was one of the most successful Greek women in America back then. And this was porno movies 24 hours, I would say. Never closed. People just walk in one after another. Very smart and very successful woman. She knew what she was doing.
Shelley Wilson was a known person on 42nd Street, also known as the Deuce. I worked for Show World Center, which was a sort of a landmark staple at that time. It was actually a sex emporium that had videos and live entertainment and what we call booth babies, where there were girls inside a booth. You couldn't touch them because there was a piece of glass between you and them. Shelley obviously knew about us and we knew about her. And then when I got to meet her, we just happened to click. We took a liking to each other. I admired her so much, and I think perhaps that's why she took a liking to me, because she saw the admiration I had on my face when I would speak to her.
Well, she had the nerve to do and the foresight to do things that I never would have thought of doing or would have had the nerve to do.
I'm not saying that she had great high ideals, but she was a force of nature. And that was what I found fascinating. And really, you know, as a young kid, to see people that can be that forcible is really inspiring, because you realize I can do it too. I started out my photo career working on hardcore porn films. And I got the job because my ex-husband was a producer, Herb Nickey. He made a movie called Devil and Miss Jones. Devil and Miss Jones was an enormous hit, and Herb did business with her. I remember meeting her and just thinking she was just larger than life. She was powerful looking. She was like a ball of fire and just incredibly engaging. Like, you could not like her.
It was just something about her that drew you in. To tell you the honest truth, I think I fell in love with Shelley in a way before I ever met her daughter Bondi. I always basically wanted to be in the theater, and that's why I came to New York. But that's a very tough business to get into, especially when you're trying to be a performer. And so I wasn't having too much luck with finding acting jobs. So I took a job cutting film. A friend of mine named Sandy Johnson had been working for Shelley, and he said, I want you to meet her. We go to the Arrows, and we go up through the lobby and up the stairs into an apartment, a very nice apartment. And in the living room, holding court, was this woman in a muumuu, half reclined on the sofa. And there were 5 or 6 people all talking to her. And in front of her was a long glass coffee table, supported by 2 white elephants. That was where all her papers were. That was her desk. I said, who is this? That's Shelley Wilson. She makes a lot of films and she has a lot of theaters. I noticed some shopping bags all around the desk. And I looked down and they were filled with cash. And I nudged Sandy and I said, what is this? That's from the theaters. Sandy, come over here. Give me a kiss. So he did, and then he introduced me. Don, you make movies. You want to make movies for me? We can do business. Of course, she was tremendous at business.
She just did amazing things. I think Shelley was one of the first, if not the first, to import homosexual films to New York City. The Adonis. That was a nice theater.
The Adonis Theater was one of the sort of premier gay porn theaters. It was so famous, it became then a topic of a porn movie itself. And one of the things I like about the porn movie, it's called The Night at the Adonis, is that it portrays the Adonis as a kind of community center.
What about that guy there, the one with all the keys? We call him the Jingler. He's an artist at giving head.
Going to the Adonis was a time in my life when I was trying to explore my sexuality. I would go to have gay sex, and it was a lot of fun. It was all about finding a place where you can express your feelings, express your sexuality.
I love this place. No, I don't think there's a room in this building I haven't fucked in.
She named it the Adonis after she acquired it. Before the Adonis, it was the Tivoli.
She bought the Tivoli property from Gulf and Western.
That was really a premier theater. I think it opened in the 20s.
She acquired the property at a very good deal because it was a porn theater.
She was a great wheeler dealer.
She had a lot of chutzpah.
Actually, I think she loved the deal and making the deal more than she ever loved what the deal finally led to. It was fun, but she certainly didn't care about gathering lots of money to show off.
She was not into luxury.
She's living over a porn theater. She could have afforded a very nice apartment any place in the city. But no, didn't matter. This was home.
That was it, which the movie theaters, yeah. Now they changed the inside, they did a restaurant, but the structure, it's the same.
She really started at the Cameo. Then she picked up the Tivoli, which became the Adonis. Then she got the Eros and the Venus. And then there was the Lido West. And then there was a Lido East. So that's how many theaters. That's a lot of theaters.
This is the famous Cameo Theater that will play the X-rated movies for 24 hours, I don't know for how many years. People just come in and out, in and out, in and out. But this was the main attraction of all these lights. This would light up the entire 44th and 8th Avenue. And this is where I used to work. It was very convenient to go from one place to another. She would call me and say, do this, do that. And I would leave my job with my boss's permission because they were good friends. You could never say no to Chelly. Whatever she wanted to do had to be done. Scase, sepleroso. I mean, shut up, I will pay you. And she always did. She would call me and she would say, bring me 4 or 5 cartons of cigarettes. Prepi na γίνει τώρα means has to be done now. Tora. And, you know, we would do what she wanted.
My sister and I always used to say, Mother, leave us all your boyfriends, because she had all these people that would do things for her, tremendous connections in all different areas. So she would use them if she needed to.
She would call me just to go upstairs and just listen to her. Cacciacato, sit down. Okay, I sit down, you know. And she would curse people that I had no idea who she was talking about. Not long, 20 minutes, half an hour. Then she opened up the closet, give me $100 bill. Get out of here now. Get the hell out. As a matter of fact, that was her. She didn't mean that. I know what she meant. Like, it's enough. You know, I know that. A lot of times she was very angry. She would try to tell you, you stupid idiot, you didn't do what I told you to do.
Well, she was very emotional because she's Greek. And so her temper would overflow a lot. And she enjoyed that. She really enjoyed getting into emotional explosions.
But it was a great relationship between all these people. We were all like brothers. We were like family. The 8th Avenue was to accept a person, either gay, either black, white. There was no racism at all back then. I rather would never came back and see it like this. Right now, I don't see any life. I see people walking around, but if they call this life, no. Here, she's in her glories right now. She says, I accomplished what I wanted to do. That's exactly how she was most of the time. Most of the time wearing black and holding a cigarette or a cigar. She would rarely smile, that I remember. Even here, she's not smiling. She never spoke about the past, no.
Her sister and her brother were killed in the Holocaust. In a lot of families, people never talk about it. That's not unusual that they don't talk about the Holocaust. It wasn't something that, you know, we were educated about or told about. I didn't grow up with my mother telling me, you had an uncle, you had an aunt, you had grandparents. I didn't even know I had a sister until she came from Greece. I had no idea that I was Jewish. Everything was on a need-to-know basis, I guess. That is what I do regret, because had I really realized that and appreciated that, I might have asked my mother many, many more questions that I didn't ask. And I might have gotten answers, and I might have even been very surprised by what the answers were. And I do regret that.
In 1983, I got Bondi to sit down with Shelley and do an interview, because I began to feel that the memories that she had were going to fade, or we were going to lose them if anything happened to her. And it was amazing.
3, 1, 2, 3, testing, 1, 2, 3. Tell me about the family.
The grandfather comes from Spain. My father, Davico Serrero, went to Salonika.
Salonika, known as Thessaloniki, had a very large Jewish population. The language they spoke was Ladino, which is Judeo-Spanish. That was her first language. She learned Greek in the streets, and she learned French in school. She was a Sephardic Jew, and they were extremely religious.
Society in Saloniki was very strict, and it was very difficult for her to deal with that. She was more expansive than that. And she apparently was a whirlwind even then in her early days.
They called me Salamos Serrero because I was like a tomboy. And I loved to go to the theater. I began to be a president of the club for make theaters. I was studying. I wanted to be a
My mother always said that she got married because her father wanted her to get married, and she respected her father very much. But she said, when you die, I'm going to get divorced. What she resented most was the fact that it was an arranged marriage. It was not her choice.
And that's it. Got married. And Dino was born. And then I left him.
And you went to France?
I went to France. He took Dino. He kidnapped Dino. I went to France, to my aunt's.
She was not meant to be a housewife, let's put it that way. She was not Nikokira, I don't think.
My father wrote me a letter, please come back, I don't feel good, I'm gonna die, and so on and so forth. I said, okay. So I came back. And meantime, my husband, he make me to go with him in order to bring Dino. They kind of blackmail. You are not going to see Dino if you don't stay with me, and took me to a hotel to go with him. I was like a mummy, you know, he was kissing me all over. And I wanted to kill him, repulsive. Every kiss he was put in my body was that I want to kill him. It was torture.
And then you got pregnant and you had Paulette.
Yeah.
Did you stay with him?
No, after Paulette, I just left him. I threw him out.
She got a Jewish divorce called a get so that Moise could remarry.
Oh,
Because
this is me and my brother. I remember, you know what I remember about this picture? holding his hand, or he's holding my hand. I was born in Athens, and so the divorce was she would take the daughter and he will take my brother, Daniel. And this is how we were. My mother had a business.
I had my own store, Arctos, Rochelle Serrero, RS. I was making Frigidaires, I was making stoves and everything. I was making a lot of money.
And she complained to her secretary, her name was Ellie, what am I going to do with Paulette? Ellie said to her, don't worry about it. We'll take Paulette, we'll bring it to Mama, Julia, and she'll take care of her, so you don't have to worry about it.
I think she knew her limitations. I think she knew I'm not a mother. You know, I can be something, but not a mother. And then the story goes, or the myth goes, that a man came in the middle of the night and scooped her up and brought her to this family. Julia, who we used to call Yaya.
This is the way I went to Yaya's house, from here. Who is it? I don't know. All I know, they took me, they were taking me to Yaya's. They're in Taverna, having a good time. And they're taking a picture of me sleeping. I look horrible, I look like an orphan. Look at my shoes, I have dirty feet. Obviously, my mother told them to do. And whatever Charlie says, everybody does. There was one thing my mother said to Ellie, make sure that she doesn't speak Spanish when you take her home. I want her to speak only Greek. And the reason for that I found out later, it was because the Greek Jews had an accent.
Poland, September 1939. The German foe begins its ruthless march of conquest and sets the stage for World War II.
And then the war come up, you know. I went to see all of them. And I said, now look, because I know they're gonna kill all the Jews, I can have passports for you to go to America because my friend was the mayor of Athens. Go jazz. I said there, let's go. What? Are you crazy, Salomon Serrero? We got so much gold here. We got so much properties. We got everything. We're going to leave everything and go. We do business with the Germans. So I didn't trust nobody. I went to Mama Julia and I said, look, I'm leaving you a letter. You're going to keep Paulette here. At no cost, at no circumstance, you're going to deliver this Paulette to my family. No mother, no father, no sister, to nobody. This stays with you until I say so. And I left Paulette there, 4 years old.
She gave me a kiss. She says, I'm going away, I'll be back to get you. She took her pinky ring out and gave me her pinky ring. And that was it. And she left.
My mother left Greece in 1939 on the Nea Las, the last boat that left Athens for America before the war broke out. It's hard to think about how do you leave your child and go to a country that you don't know anything about.
I came to the United States, came to the United States with $5 in the pocket. So I didn't know yet America. I didn't know how very difficult it was. I don't know about that, you know. And I met some people, Kay and Chrissy at the boat. So when I come out, so where we're gonna go? We're gonna go to Rex Hotel with $5. You know, I say, Kay, I say, one day you're gonna be my helper. Are you crazy? She has to be. I say, I'm not crazy. I say, I bet you any money you're gonna be my employee one day. Mr. Yiannopoulos owns a lot of stands, you know, with hot dogs and everything. The next day he says to me, you know something? I want to make you some business. I said, okay. So he took me with a car, he took me to Dartmouth Street. He says, we're gonna put the stand there. It's gonna cost maybe about $6,000 and the merchandise, so you give me $50 a month.
She sold hot dogs and soda, and she used to go Pepsi-Cola, Coca-Cola, 7-Up.
And I took care of my employee. I said, see, we should make a bet. I took her as an employee.
My job when I was very little was to fill up these bags with peanuts. I was supposed to put 13 peanuts in the bag. She sold them for 15 cents. And I said to my mother, "You're cheating the people. You're charging too much." And my mother said, "Don't be a stupid. You have to make a profit." My first business lesson.
Saloniki ist in deutscher Hand. Hier war im Weltkrieg das Hauptquartier der Alliierten. Jetzt ist dieser wichtige Hafen schon nach 4,5 Tagen von unseren Truppen erobert.
During the war, my uncle came to Athens to take me to Saloniki so we can all be together, all the family. Yeah, Mama Julia said, "No, you can't take her." He said, "Yes, I'm her brother." But she told him, "Your sister told me not to give Paulette to anyone. Even if my mother comes out of the grave, you don't give her to her."
As most Sephardic Jews did in Salonika, they wanted the families to stay together. But it saved Paulette's life that they weren't together.
The Germans were rounding up all the Jews in Salonika and sending them off to Auschwitz.
They took them all. My aunts, my uncles, these friends of my mother.
I know that in Athens, the way that the Jewish people were treated was a lot different than it was in Salonika because the clergy of the Greek Orthodox Church was very into trying to help the Jews and trying to keep them away from the Germans.
My Greek mother told me, she said to me, "You're a very lucky person. You have two mothers. One who's away and she's going to come and get you, and me."
You know, if Chelly hadn't picked that family in particular, you know, who knows what would have happened. I'm sure there are many other good, righteous Gentiles in Greece, of course, but they risked their lives.
They were a wonderful family, obviously, who made very great sacrifices and put their own lives in danger to have Paulette living there as an openly hidden child.
Everybody knew that I was Jewish. Ότι ήμουν Εβραία. Όλοι το ξέρανε. They also loved this family very much because she was a wonderful lady. And I guess they protected her. And we were scared because if the Germans came, they weren't only going to take me, they were going to take everybody. You have to protect yourself and everybody else because you say one wrong word and everybody was paranoid, you know. Where did you find the meat? Where did you find olive oil?
There was no food. I mean, it wasn't only the Jews that suffered during the war. The starvation in Athens was incredible.
It was terrible. It was awful.
Chelly was very worried about everything that was going on in Greece. She was making money at the refreshment stand and sending the money to Greece to buy pieces of newsreel footage and cultural footage to put together a film about Greece in order to raise money to help the Greek war effort against the Germans. So that was Greece on the March.
She went to play her film at the Cameo Theater, which was called The Squire. So she needed somebody with the projector.
Rex was a film projectionist who came from a big theatrical family in England. And they were also Jewish, but they never told anyone because there was very little work for Jews. So they changed their name to Wilson and got work theatrically. He was very clever technically. He knew cameras, he knew projectors.
And he was fascinated by her. I don't know why, but he was.
The guy was coming every night and lighted me cigarettes. He gave me cigarettes, give me cigarettes. So I married him. It was nice. He was providing me with cigarettes.
My father was very romantic. Love at first sight. He loved her right away. My mother didn't speak English then, and my dad never spoke any other language except for English. They did not communicate. Their relationship was very tumultuous. There were tremendous fights. My mother threw the mattress out of the window. The neighbors would call the police because she threw every dish in the house and glass at him. She went to work for the Hudson Shipping Company, and she was the liaison for the war effort in Greece.
And I sent $100,000 merchandise. Rice, sugar, and flour and everything, yeah.
She was very nervous about the children, their safety. And she was trying to get information from the Red Cross, which she got some little bits and pieces of information about how they were doing. Daniel, he was stuck in Salonika. Somebody helped him and hid him.
The war ended, the British came. Everybody was happy. And then finally we got a letter from my mother. I found out that she was in America and that she was coming to take me. She was gonna go and get my brother first in Palestine.
My grandmother was going to Israel to get Daniel, who had left Greece after the war and had joined forces in Israel.
He was in a kibbutz, and then he went to the Haganah, he went to the army. Of course, he didn't like it there. It was miserable, miserable.
My grandmother went to Israel, again bribed someone, there was always a bribe involved, to bring him back, because once you join the army, you couldn't just leave, so she had to do some negotiations.
So she got on a boat, and she got him in, and she said to him, now we're going to Athens. You're gonna stay in your cabin. You don't come out from the cabin.
I had Dino stolen from Israel. So I said to Dino, stay in the cabin. So I got out from the boat. I go to Mount Mayulia. Colette was there. And the poor kids, I kissed them. I just came. I kissed them and I say, you want some money to take a taxi to go home? Because I have a big baulo. With 2 feet. With podia. Yeah. Con la podia, do pera, hace me tocado, que far frustrated. And where is Dino, you think? He's telling to the man who is watching the boat, my mother brought me from Israel, and he's going to take me to America. See, he was in the boat yet. They grabbed him to take him to the immigration. I go to the immigration, I say, you come with me, we go to the mayor of Athens. So I took the 2 people there, we taken my car with the chauffeur was waiting, and I go to Kojas. And we went to Kojas, oh, Cherry! So I tell the story, what happened to Dino, and the officers were crying, everybody was crying, and that's it, finished. In the meantime, Dino is already in the boat, I let him go. Goodbye, Dino. A friend of mine has a boat, a shipping, you know? Cost me $1,000 to put him downstairs.
This is the day before I left to come to America.
This one?
Yes. You see this dress?
Yeah.
This dress was made out of a parachute.
Wow.
I was getting ready to go to America, and that was a big thing. And all my friends were, oh my God, you're gonna go to America, what are you gonna do? I used to say to them, I'm gonna be a movie star. My mother came so she can arrange about our papers, the passports, when I'm gonna live, what ship am I gonna be in. I was 12 and a half years old, I didn't speak English. But when I came to the United States, she didn't come with me, I came by myself. When I came on the ship, everybody, you know, we got up to see the Statue of Liberty. And I looked down and I see all these yellow cars. And I said, oh, in America, they have yellow cars. It was the taxes. Nobody explained anything to you. And Pubandi they were telling her, Paulette is coming, Paulette is coming. What did she know who Paulette was? And she was waiting for me to come. She was very young, beautiful, beautiful child.
The best day of my life was when Paulette came. I was only 4. But I just loved her right away.
I tried to teach Bandi to speak Greek.
Paulette would teach me some Greek and I would teach her some English. We used to go mati, miti, stoma, magya, and I would say the English word, she would say the Greek word.
She would talk to me constantly. I didn't know what she was saying. She was the most adorable child. But it was very difficult for me. I didn't want to be here. I never unpacked my bag for months. My mother, she understood where I came from. And she wanted me to be here, to become American. She took 2 chairs and she says to me, this is η Ελλάδα και εδώ είναι η Αμερική. Αν θες να καθίσεις στην Ελλάδα θα καθίσεις σε αυτή την καρέκλα. Αν θες να καθίσεις στην Αμερική θα καθίσεις στην... Δεν μπορείς να είσαι σε 2 καρέκλες. If you can make it 5 years, you'll never want to go back.
I love this
Oh,
picture.
this is the best.
That picture
This
is
the
so
best.
wonderful.
This is the best.
This is
This is classic.
Close up, she didn't care. Oh my God. I don't think my mother ever went back to Thessaloniki. Never. It only held bad memories for her. Very bad memories. Nothing but loss. Only 5% of the Jewish population survived. To this day, I don't know what happened to my mother's mother. One of the last times I saw my mother at home, she looked very desolate, you know, and I had said to her, Mother, what's wrong? She wouldn't tell me. I said, tell me, maybe I can help you, because she would always say she could help me or anybody with whatever problems that they would have. And she said, I want to see my sister. This was so many years later. And I said, no, you're right, I can't help you. So then she went, can you bring me a Nazi so I can shoot him? My sister has said that there was a time when you could get reparations, but my mother didn't want it because she said it was blood money. She didn't want it because she had paid too dear for that money, and she wouldn't take it. I think my mother did have survivor's guilt. This picture, I have to know who these people are. I'm never going to find out, am I?
I have no idea, Randy.
I wonder if I showed pictures to everybody in Salonika, if somebody might remember somebody.
They're all dead, Bobby.
I know. My mother's Aunt Allegra left Salonika in 1932 to go to France. At the end of the war, my mother heard from Allegra that she had survived. And the letter that my mother responded with was found in Allegra's papers. It is written in Ladino, Judeo-Spanish.
My dearest Allegra, oh Allegra, just seeing your name on the envelope made my heart skip a beat. Adding one more person to the list of survivors fills my heart with joy. I can't even begin to describe the anguish I suffered, thinking of each and every one of you. I spent entire nights without sleeping and days without eating. I can assure you that if it wasn't for my husband, whom I love dearly, I would have ended up in an insane asylum.
Sunday was a sin, we just had the Greek mentality. You never work on Sunday. And we used to go to the movies, but she would bring all these nice films.
She certainly knew who was doing what and who had the assets. And all of the big Greek producers and distributors knew her, and they would ship films to her.
All the good names, she was on it. And always a comedy and a sad.
It wasn't making a whole lot of money. A few people had suggested, Shelley, why don't you try these other films? So she got a few films, and all of a sudden, the money came rolling in. This is good.
A lot of theaters were driven into having a product that they could buy reasonably, if not cheap, and get people to see, which was a very good audience. You didn't need a lot of matrons. They didn't go to eat candy and popcorn and stuff. So you had a very good audience who paid a higher price than the general ticket admission.
She was very good at recognizing opportunities and taking advantage of them.
Shelley was the first person we ever sold a movie to. It was the summer of 1965. I was selling a movie that I had invested in. The title was Flesh and Lace, which in those days was an adult film, which today could play regular TV in the afternoon.
Who is she?
Beverly Hill, my roommate.
It had one flash scene of a naked woman on a bed on her stomach, and another scene of a nightclub with a girl dancing. It was just a nice story.
Get out of here. Joni, please. I said get out of my sight.
We needed to play it in New York, and Shelley had a theater. We made an arrangement with Shelley where the first $4,500 of receipts would go to Shelley, And then there was $600 advertising expense, and that would be taken off the top before the $4,500. And then we were to get 90% of everything above that, and she would get 10% above that. Well, about 2 weeks before the play date, she said, we need to raise the advertising $400 more. And then we got another call a week before to raise it. It wound up being $6,000 before we got any money. What we didn't know, because we didn't have real experience, was we were not just allowing her to take the first $4,500 or the first $6,000. We were guaranteeing it. And then we found out before the movie opened that the theater never did $6,000, which would be a very typical Shelley kind of deal. But as luck would have it, in the first week, the film did $10,000, which was quite an accomplishment. We broke the theater house record, and people were coming over and patting us on the back. It was good for her, too, because it established a new paradigm for her theater.
That was indecent. Honey, that's what I am, indecent. And that's what I've always been.
You have to understand, in 1965, the mores of America were changing.
Obviously, there was a demand, because if there wasn't a demand, it would not have been successful, and it was extremely successful, so.
It was a forbidden fruit for many years, and now it was available, and people wanted to see it.
She made a lot of money, and she had very many people working for her who stayed in the apartment, and they took care of her, plus they were cooks, they would clean the apartment, all women. One of them, as I recall, was Mikey, and she would come up with shopping bags full of cash. Shopping bags. As the future came upon us, Shelley purchased theaters. I know one of them on 8th Avenue was the Eros, and then the Venus. She named her theaters after Greek gods, okay?
It was about making money, honey. Making money.
She used to have Friday night poker games at her apartment. So you go into this seedy theater lobby on 8th Avenue, and you go in, very steep stairway that you had to go up. And the place is locked like a fortress, like a steel door with 1,000 locks on it. And then we get in, and it's like this hugely ornate, amazing apartment.
It was a round table, and there would be little tables so you could put your drink, your coffee, your ashtray. Back then, everybody would smoke.
And she had the whole little crew of all the cool people. Jamie Gillis was there, Mickey Zaffarano, and Herb Nicky. And they would literally play poker all night long.
There would be money all over the place. 20s, 50s, 100s.
Those games would, very high stakes. And they would go on sometimes for days.
I'm sure a lot of business went down. And yeah, if Mickey was there, he would pop in, I'm sure, to do a little business.
Some of the stories I've heard, she was involved with the mafia. I think you had to be part of the pornography industry in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah. Yes, they protected us.
At the poker games, she was almost always the only woman. And she sat at the head of the table. Always.
The fact that Shelley was able to hold her own in that world of all those guys who are all sharks in one way or another is beyond commendable. I mean, what a woman.
It was all about the fun of the deal. It was all about the fun of gambling.
The one thing I learned about gamblers, having spent a lot of time with them, they don't actually care about winning. I mean, they care about winning in the moment, but they mostly just want to keep gambling.
She loved people who knew how to talk and get things done and sneak behind things and go around things. And she just adored people like that. And unfortunately, she got involved with a few of them and got taken a bit from time to time because they were good at it.
There was a lot of barbut places in barbut, meaning they used to play dice. She started going over there very often. And she lost a lot of money, I believe. I heard from my boss, Petropoulos, Stapira nechtes. We're talking a couple of $100,000, or maybe more, maybe more. But she wouldn't give up because whatever she lost, in 1 week, she would get it back. Not from the gambling, but from the business she had. No matter how much she lose, everything would come back.
The porn industry focused on 42nd Street because that's where the theaters were. These big theaters, huge theaters, many of them not having enough business. And so they would eventually move to porn, which was the most lucrative. In the early days, because there was no real porn industry producing films on a regular basis, the theaters ended up producing porn as well.
My mother and her partner then, who was Lee Pomeranz, formed Shelley Films. She probably thought about, well, if I'll make films, I have a theater to play them, and that, she thought this would be a good business venture.
This is the story of a silk stocking industry, an industry of perversion. Scarf of mist, thigh of satin is different.
And then ultimately she distributed them as well. So it was, like they did in Hollywood before it was broken up, where you owned the theater, you produced the film, and you distributed the film.
We made a few films for them when I wasn't married to Bondi. The way I got into the business was a film called Scared Their Pants Off. On weekends, for 3 weekends, we made Scare Their Pants Off. A film with a little nudity, but some horror also. It was a lot like off-Broadway theater.
Please don't hurt me. I keep telling you. I know what you keep telling me. You keep telling me we got the wrong girl, and that's damn silly nonsense.
Everybody sort of scooping along and having a good time and making these films. They didn't pay an awful lot, but if you made enough of them, you made a living. And there were some good people in it.
Are we all set up for that party? Party? Since when did you all get so civilized? You mean orgy?
You had to have actors. So you couldn't show sex, so you had to have people who could act like the sex was taking place and real. And so it meant acting.
It was fairly easy to cast. What usually happened is that there were people who were around as models.
Musicians, actors, various kinds of entertainers who were not doing well, and so they would do porn for a little extra money.
What I want now is some of your ass. All right?
You're always after my ass.
I want to fill up 40 feet of screen with your ass.
In the early days, the nudity wasn't really highly important, and it was just basically topless if it was. But later on, it changed a lot. It's an industry that grew hair by hair, one pubic hair at a time. The public wanted as much as they could see. Every film had a little more than the last film.
Baby. You don't give yourself credit.
Baby, you're going overboard. What do you think I want you to do? Sleep with the guy? Oh, wow. Oh, honey, you're crazy.
Softcore porn evolved. So at first you had what they called beaver, which was just a female crotch. And then they moved to pickle and beaver, which was a penis and female crotch. And so eventually hardcore emerged. And so you had penetration.
The industry exploded until there was nothing left to see.
Hardcore pornography really emerged in 1969, almost like on the dot.
I've never seen a film like this before. Oh, it's different, all right.
Shelley was softcore. Then after that, it led to variety films. And variety films was Shelley and Bondi.
I didn't have much to do with the productions. I just did the distribution.
Variety was mostly hardcore.
As I got older and was a teenager, I knew what pornography was. It was conflicting. I thought of Grandma Celli as a feminist earlier in her life. The pictures and the information that I knew about her living in Greece, owning a business, smoking cigarettes, wearing pants, having short hair, lent itself to the sort of Simone Beauvoir, idea of a feminist. Then when I went to college, and I'm studying feminism, and pornography is the antithesis of feminism. So I thought of her as perpetuating a very destructive view of men and women's bodies.
She never had any compunctions about any of that. Couldn't care less about the content.
My mother would never apologize for who she was or what she did, ever, ever, ever. Even though she grew up in a culture where everything that she was about was wrong.
Do you have a lot of friends? No, I hate men. What? I can't stand when a man touch me.
I knew she was gay. Nobody ever said to me, your grandmother's gay. Or if she's gay, why is she married to Rex Wilson? I mean, it was just assumed that this was her lifestyle. This is who she was. Today, you'd say she was completely out, proud of who she is. She never pretended to be anybody other. But when we were growing up, you didn't talk as openly about who's gay, who's not gay. She had many gay male friends.
The first time that anybody ever said anything to me, it was at a funeral. A friend of mine was next to me, and she looks over and she says to me, I didn't know your mother was gay. And I said, I guess I didn't know either, or I didn't know that everybody knew, and I didn't know. But I wasn't even really aware of it, or I just didn't want to see it, because in those years that I grew up, it was not something that you accepted so easily.
Today, it's like, whatever. It's the sky is blue, you're gay. It's like no big deal.
Noni and Eva did live with us.
This was her other family. Eva was the opera singer from Greece. Mikey and Angela were friends who came to live with her at various times. They were all gay. They would clean, they would cook, and they were always there.
Hi, Angela.
Hi. Rexy, she definitely had a very interesting and loving relationship with for a very long time. Even when she started living with Eva and Noni, Rexy was still there and he was still a part of the family as long as he wanted to be. Eventually, he felt dispossessed and moved himself to Puerto Rico. But when he came back, he was always welcomed. He was always taken care of. He was going blind, and she took care of him. Her first husband, Moïse, became a friend of hers, and they would write letters back and forth in French. I think she lived for the family, and that included the extended family.
At the time, it was late 60s, I believe, yes, late 60s. And Celli Wilson decided to open up a Greek restaurant. She opened up the place called Mykonos, and she had the right person to run the place, Noni Kandaraki.
She would have her lover, Noni, singing there, who was a sort of opera singer, grovelly, 6 packs of cigarettes a day kind of singer. Very nice voice. So it was strange going to the house and seeing Noni in a sort of like nightgown, walking around with her cigarettes and so forth. And then like at that night, she would be in this restaurant singing and they all glamored up in this sort of kitsch sequin thing.
The Mykonos opened basically for Noni to have a place to sing and for them to have a place of their own.
It was going to be like a little boîte in the beginning, and then it ended up being a full-blown restaurant. It was very lively. My sister worked there as a hostess.
That was the place to be and the place to stay till 4 o'clock in the morning. The food was fabulous.
Vasily Fotopoulos did the design of the restaurant.
Beautiful murals.
Vasily had won the Academy Award for Zorba the Greek for the art direction.
Handsome, handsome guy. Bonnie used to be, she loved him. I met a lot of Greek stars and American stars.
Yul Brynner.
Jackie with Onassis came.
Shirley MacLaine.
Bobby Kennedy.
Rod Steiger.
Everybody went to Mykonos.
She did the smartest thing. She brought in a pelican.
Yes, she did. She brought the mayor with the pelican from the island of Mykonos.
Over there, the pelican is considered to be a bird of peace. And he is here as a peace, as a symbol of peace to the world.
And everybody came to see the pelican. It was lying out the door to come and have dinner. And this was constant for about a year or two, like nonstop. You would see only limousines outside just to see the pelican.
It was a very fun place to go.
And then we had Bondi's wedding there, which was beautiful.
The place was full of flowers. My mother had built a floral, it was almost like a chuppah that a Jewish couple would get married under. We were opening a new film at the time I was getting married, and I was very, very busy. So I didn't really have that much to do with what happened at my wedding. My mother wasn't that interested in business because Mykonos was going on, so she was more interested in the restaurant than she was in the films. So I was doing all of the work.
In the early 70s, it was a very exciting but fraught time. There were all kinds of legal implications.
Hardcore never became legal. A community could ban, in its local area, certain kinds of porn if it didn't satisfy what they called community standards.
Federal government was prosecuting people, and a lot of people were getting busted.
Herb, my ex-husband, was charged with obscenity 3 different times, major cases like serious, you will go to jail, felony kind of cases.
Bondi was not real keen about the possibilities of getting harassed or arrested running a distribution company. She was good at running a distribution company, but she didn't like the fact that the FBI might wander in and harass her.
It wasn't until the business got a little more dangerous that it got more difficult. And for me, it got most difficult when I got arrested for distributing a film, Illusions of a Lady.
Yeah. You really are quite lovely.
The indictment was on interstate shipment of obscene material and conspiracy against the United States. So I felt very threatened, and I felt she didn't really understand it. Everything's going to be okay, darling. Everything's going to be okay. In the meantime, it was a felony charge. I was arrested by the FBI. I mean, it was not everything is okay. I had to go to trial in New Orleans. And I had been told, too, that I could plea nolo contendo and I wouldn't have to worry about a trial or anything else. And I said, no, didn't do anything wrong. I'm going to fight this all the way down. I'm not copping any plea. I apparently have a tick I wasn't aware of, which is I giggle. So every time they would ask me a question, I giggled. My husband believes that's why I didn't get convicted, because I was too stupid. So we all got off, which was wonderful. Of course, they asked the jury why. And the jury, which was mostly women, they said because the obscenity law said current community standards. And they said, they make these films down here in the quarter. So that was it. Current community standards. It wasn't violating anything. So that was the end of that.
Basically, things are changing. And I think Hair or Calcutta, when you have a Paramount movie such as Tropic of Cancer using words like fuck and showing a bush, it would indicate that the American public is maturing.
I lived on 45th Street, right across from the theater. It was wonderful, but the building was full of prostitutes.
The porn industry was very closely associated with other kinds of sex work. Prostitution, strip tease, and in New York City that was centered at Times Square.
I mean, try to understand, 42nd Street, you had a lot of blood banks.
It was a tough area.
It was also a very violent period, lots of drug use.
You would see people, I mean, ripping chains off people's necks. It was terrible.
It was scary.
Nowhere you can find on. For $1, nowhere. Cheese, quarters, I'll take cheese, credit cards, phone numbers, and everything. Check it out, check it out.
I was in Vietnam. I was more afraid of walking down 42nd Street at that time than I was in Vietnam.
It seemed dark.
Quiet on the set, please. Please, quiet. We're going to go for a sound take.
Shelley, darling, you want for posterity, that means the future, to have your photograph. We will play under the Adonis before every show.
We stopped making films sometime in the 80s, and then the theaters ultimately closed in the 90s with Giuliani.
And Giuliani was our nemesis. He came after us with a vengeance.
A huge urban renewal project has closed many porno-related businesses, and big business like Disney and Sony have invested millions.
Most of the people in New York City would like to ban sex shops, porn shops, do away with them completely.
Nowadays, I think there are 2 porn theaters left in New York City. One is out in Queens. Yeah, we're constantly looking for like the last porn theater.
Once Giuliani came and closed all of the theaters, Grandma Michelli had to make an adjustment. She had investments in real estate.
I know that a lot of people were going to her for money, and I always felt that I didn't want to go and hang out with her because sometimes she would say, "Are you okay with money? Do you need some money?" And she would shove, hundreds or whatever it is in my pocket, and it made me feel weird. And I was like, I don't want to visit her if I'm going to get money, each time, because I got kind of freaked out by it. I know it sounds strange, but it just made me too weirded out. It's like I didn't want to have that relationship with her. And I think there was a time she tried to give me a building, but my father talked her out of it. Thank God. What would I do with a brownstone in New York? Anyway.
Sorry.
Yeah. But she was very happy that I was in film. She did finance my first real attempt at being a filmmaker, which is sort of like this supernatural vampire thriller which took place in the theater that she owned, or the abandoned theater that she owned, the Adonis. I said to myself, this is a haunted mansion. For me, it was like the porn version of the Chronicles of Narnia. Everything was weird. So I said, okay, well, what do you do with a place like this? You make a vampire movie.
Sweetie, you don't know the first thing about being a detective.
So I wrote a movie called Gargoyle and Goblin.
It'll turn him to stone.
And I had free run of the place, and we shot in 16mm, and I showed her all the footage. She had a pretty good laugh at it.
To Shelly! Shelly!
Honestly, I think she was probably the only member of my family that I really admired. Mostly because I knew where she came from and how she built this empire essentially on just being gutsy.
She was a businesswoman, and she was very good at what she did. From selling chestnuts to buying, property in New York that was worth a fortune.
She did very well. Because there was always a plan. You might not have known what it was, but she had a plan. As I started to get older and know more about the story of my mother and how she survived and what my grandmother did on behest of her family, I started to see her picture in a larger way. There's something that I feel that I owe to her, my grandmother. She might not have thought that what she was doing was an act of resistance by coming to the United States and leaving my mother, but it was. I think she had an invincibility sort of idea about herself. And then as she got older, I think she realized that, she has limitations too. Later in her life, she started to get sicker. She had many heart attacks. She was a chain smoker for many years. She quit smoking, but she thinks she survived 5 heart attacks, if not more. And I think she then became scared. She loved life so much.
How was your birthday? Good. Terrific.
When Grandma Chelly was dying, she had the forethought to write this letter. She made the shopping list for what she wanted Bondi and my mother to buy to eat at her funeral. And we had to follow it to the T.
Spanakopitάκια, pickles, white fish, Nova Scotia, μουστάρδα, όλα. Ελιές, μπακλαβά. Huevos de χαμινάδες είναι τα αυγά που κάνανε στη Θεσσαλονίκη.
She said, I want you to eat this food. I want you to enjoy it. I want you to toast me. And I want you to know that I am with God and I have no regrets. That was a very nice gift that she gave to all of us to say that. We used to joke that she died on Thanksgiving so that she would see us with all the food. And so when we had Thanksgiving just 2 days ago, even my mother and Bondi were like, yes, Mother, here, we're taking pictures of the food. Those things in life were important to her. Food, survival, you claim your space, you are who you are. While you're here now, you're going to enjoy yourself and make the best out of everything.
why am I building this? I feel like I'm possessed. I have wanted to build this since I was 16 years old. So at a certain point, I said, okay, I'll build this whole thing and the story will come to me. Sort of like Game of Thrones meets Private Ryan in space. I'm going to roll this puppy into a studio and shoot a movie. Also, I'm very kind of proud of the fact that somehow this lineage of filmmaking has continued throughout. I can't imagine Shelley divorced from movies at all. So for me, it just kept in line with the family. Oh, she would love to see this. I think she would get a real kick out of it. I think that definitely being raised in that family, the weirdness of it made me numb to everybody else's reality. It was always like being in another world. So with that kind of a life upbringing, I don't think I had any choice. When I see what people do with their lives as a daily grind, you know, you wake up, you have your whatever breakfast, you go 9 hours a day, whatever, I look at that like science fiction. I don't know how anyone does that. And that might sound incredibly spoiled or entitled or whatever it is, but I mean, if you're not here to create something or to give someone else escapism or have a message or do something, then what are you doing?